shut up now and let you guys go home. But let me leave you with just a final thought here. Getting back to the story of Esther. Mordecai is her uncle, or I'm sorry, her cousin. And Mordecai is old enough to be her daddy. See, Esther was a little girl and her mommy and daddy were killed. And so Esther was taken away from her own parents. But Mordecai basically adopted her and treated her as his own child. And she was a beautiful woman. And as she grew and became a young lady, Mordecai was so proud of her and says, you know, you're just so beautiful and the Lord has spared your life, etc., etc. Well, they had never had any idea of what would happen. Well, as she makes it to the second most important person in the kingdom, and that's just the way God does the Jews. It's just amazing. But it came out that they were going to kill the Jews. And word gets to Esther about this. And Mordecai says a very important statement. Now I want you to listen to what he says. He's looking at this little basic daughter of his and he says, darling, listen to me. Don't you dare think with thyself that thou shalt escape just because you're in the king's house more than all these other Jews. He says, for if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, you know what, darling? Somewhere from somewhere else, God is going, there will be enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from some other place. Because God's going to take care of his own, but he says, I've got news for you, but thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth, darling, listen, he says, who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther, do you think this is a coincidence? Do you think it's a coincidence that you are the king's wife? And you're in this position, and you're a Jew, and they're going to kill all these Jews. And look, he admires you and he loves you. Why don't you speak up for your own people? You have to stop and think, what would you and I do if we lived back during the World War II? When there were lots, guess what? There were lots of Christians in Germany. Lots of churches. That was a really powerful place historically. The Reformation started there and all kinds of great things. But you know, folks, the church, by and large, was silent. I mean, there were the Corrie ten Boons and who's the guy who wears the glasses? Dietrich Bonhoeffer. There were those, but they were few. But you have to ask yourself, what would you have done if you knew beforehand that there were going to be 6 million Jews killed? Well, the Bible tells us that part of our prayer life should always involve praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Yes. Matter of fact, God is so wanting you to do it, he gives you a promise. You know, a lot of these Christians into prosperity. Man, if you want to be in prosperity, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Amen.
Now, listen to this, and this is so important that you hear this. This was a minister who ended up being imprisoned in concentration camps. He was a pastor there in Berlin, Germany. And this is what he says. It says volumes. You might have heard this before. He says, when the Nazis came for the communists, I remained silent. Because I wasn't a communist. So, well, they're going to do that to the communists. I ain't going to say anything about it. When they locked up the Social Democrats, I remained silent because I was not a socialist. I didn't say anything. I didn't preach any sermons on it, didn't say anything about it, because hey, that's what they deserve. When they came for the trade unionists, I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. When they came for the Jews, I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. I'm not going to say anything. And then they came for me. but there was no one left to speak out. The fact is, right now, we are in a time, I'm trying to think of, you know, when time goes out, you call it its clock is going backwards, what do you call it? When it goes backwards. Anyway, it's countdown, that's the word. We're in a countdown for 4 months. We have a president that has openly declared that, and the Secretary of the State, Hillary Clinton, and maybe tomorrow during the session I'm going to show some stuff I was hoping to get to, but obviously you can tell I'm the longest-winded preacher you ever heard in your life. But I was going to show some stuff where every single time America says something to try to get Israel to give away their land or give their land to the Palestinians, God smacks us. And we saw this take place back to back. Have you noticed we've had back to back, back to back, back to back storms and judgments and floods and tornadoes and devastating, record-breaking. Every single one of them has been directly involved in our government leaders standing against Israel. Now I want you to know something. Our nation will either be blessed or be given over to divine judgment according to how we treat the Jews. I think that you and I need to speak up. Amen? Amen? I think you and I need to say something about this. And I think as Christians, everybody here, and I would say most of you know the Lord in a real way, you need to understand, you need to get on top of this because there is so much about to take place before our very eyes. Right. I honestly tell you, I am afraid to see what is going to happen if our country stands with the UN. They've already said that they're not going to veto against it. And if that's happening, folks, we're in deep trouble. Right. You know, we're going to be back. Where's Pastor? We're going to be back last week of September. Right, Pastor? Yeah. The first week of October, whatever those dates are for the prophecy conference. I'm going to tell you, that's going to be an interesting conference. You talk about watching some things fulfilled before us. It'll be very gracious. Well, I hope that you that can make it tomorrow. Will be with us at 2 o'clock. If we stay for a little longer, maybe we could just go into that 2 o'clock. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to keep it so late. Now you always appreciate your pastor when he doesn't preach long, right? You always thought he was long-winded, but he ain't long-winded no more, is he? I sure do love you all. God bless you. Thank you all for coming. And